Hello everyone, today we're going to be continuing with our form data util by creating the tests for it. So to get started, we'll come over to our utils, we'll create a new file, we'll just call this the form data helper.test.js. And I think we're mostly going to be focusing on this util because right now if we run the coverage report, I'm pretty sure we have like one failing test we have to fix, but also we're missing a bit of coverage for a post form and for a post list. So I think we'll cover all of that in its own video, and then this one will just focus on testing this form data helper. Now, one other thing you might want is the ability in our form data helper to export a function, which we'll call form data to object. Just in case you get a form data, you can then take this and convert it. So all we really have to do is start with a const obj, and then we can just go ahead and do the inverse of what we were doing before, and we can return the object. Now this is a pretty small function because if it's already in form data form, all we really need to do is get the key, put it into the object, and then set the value to be the form data.get key, which is going to be the value of that form data, and then you're pretty much good to go. So that aside, let's go ahead and let's create this helper. To get started, we want to import our two methods. So say object to form data, and we can get the form data to object if that's something you're interested in. We can then go ahead and describe this test, close it. And for this one, what we can actually do is we can have one for the object to form data, and then we can have another one for the form data to object. So let's start with this form data to object, because I think this is actually the easiest one to test real quick. We'll start by creating a form data, say new form data. We can then append a name or a key and a value. And then we can append another key and another value. Then we can say, all right, take this form data and give me an object. So we'll say the form data.object, .toObject form data gives us a result. And then we can say, all right, we want this const result, or sorry, we expect this result .to equal, and then it's going to be A of 1 and B of 2, right? And that's pretty much all we have to do here. Now we want to wrap this in some sort of, overall test. We'll say it should convert form data to an object. And let's come back over here, put a space in this. And then after this, we can do our little arrow function, and then we can move this down here, and that'll fix our syntax error. Now we can go ahead and test this by running this test. It'll open up our VS Code terminal. We can also just run our npm run test. And then if you ever want to, you can also just specifically run a, some sort of test out of a specific directory. So here in our client, we have our src folder. We can then go into our features, our utils, right? And then we can go into the form data helper.test. And then you can run this file specifically without all of the other stuff running. So there we can see that passed. Okay, so that takes care of that one. Let's go ahead and let's deal with the object to form data, because this is probably the larger one. For this, we want to start by saying it should convert a simple object to form data, very similar to the other one. And then we arrow function it again. And then in here, we just want to say const. This is going to be our expected object. So we'll say expected object is equal to, and then we can just do a title of hello world and a body of this is a test. Then we can come down here and we can say const actual object is equal to object to form data and pass in the expected object. We can then expect the expect the actual object dot get title to dot to equal the expected object dot title. We can do the same thing for the body here, and then we can go ahead and we can run this test in particular as well, and we can see this one also passes. Once again, we can just run this entire suite now. We should have two tests that are both passing, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's one. Now, how did that do for our coverage? Let's go ahead and let's do an npm run coverage. We can go ahead and run this, and then we can hopefully see in here that our form utils right here, or utils for our form data helper, has an 88% coverage. Now, most of that's coming because we were using it in like our other components already, like our new and edit form components. Because those are using it, those are technically being tested, so that already has coverage. But in this case, we're doing pretty good. So that's one scenario that we had in there, was just basic object. Now, the other one we had was that little call where we said if the object is, or if it's an object, but it's not a file, which means we have a nested object, this append to form data should then run, which is our object to form data, this right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're just going to test this real quick. We'll say it should handle nested objects, comma, arrow function. And then we can come down here and then we can also just take this and close this. All right, so our expected object is going to be not quite this. What we want to do is say our expected object is going to be a post, and then we'll pass this in. So now we've got a nested object in here. Then after this, let's go ahead and let's close this. We can say our const actual object is going to be our object to form data expected object. And then once again, we want to expect the actual object.get post title, because we want to match this layout right here, post title, to equal the expected object.post.title. Let's do the same thing for the body here, and then let's go ahead and let's run these tests. So we can go ahead and click run. We can see that test passed. So this one's also working. Now that's not going to, I believe, improve our coverage. Should still be at like 88% if I'm not mistaken. We are running into an issue with our post edit form. That's fine. Let's come down here. We are now missing lines 34 and 43, which is still 88%. Okay, that's totally fine. Again, I like testing these things individually just in case, so that it's not as reliant on those other components to do the testing. So now let's say we should handle date objects. Again, we're not using a date right now, but in the future we might. So I just want to, handle this ahead of time. So what we'll do for this is we'll say we have an expected object. This has a, we could do it like this. I have it a bit simpler in my other test case, but we can do it like this. We'll say this has a post, a title, a body, and let's change this to a created at. And then we'll grab the created at in here, and we'll grab the created at in here, just so it matches sort of what we get from the Rails backend. And then we have our actual object. We pass it in. We then expect the actual object.get post created at to equal the expected object.post.createdAt.to ISO string, because in our form data helper, we're doing that conversion to an ISO string. So let's go ahead and let's run this one and see if this test passes. You can see right here that test also passes, so that's pretty cool. Let me go ahead and let me minimize some of these just so that we have a bit easier time reading where we are. So that handles that. Now the last one we want to do is say it, and then this is of course the key one, right? Should handle file objects. So this is our little test to make sure that our active storage images are going to work as expected, right? So in here, do a const file equals new file. We can then say we have some content for this file, and we can give this a name of filename.txt. So let's do that. Let's then come down here and let's say we have a const expected object, which is a post. The post has a file of type file or of name file. And then we can come down here, we can create our actual object, and then we can once again expect the actual object.get post title if we want to. I don't know why we would, but I'm actually looking for GitHub Copilot to generate the file right here. So we want to expect the file to equal the expected file. So let's go ahead and let's run this one. This should handle the file for us. And now if we come in here, if we run our npm run coverage, I expect that one post edit test to still fail, but now our utils have 100% code coverage, which is a lot nicer than where they were before. And all of these tests are pretty easy to understand. If at any point we ever come in here and we break some of this logic, we'll have pretty much a test that narrows it down to like one or two functions that could be breaking. There's always that risk of like, one of our tests is failing, and the reason why the test is failing is because we break something in here, but we only actually break it down here, and then we get like 2 or 3 failing tests because of how like testing these larger functions works. But most of the time you'll be able to narrow it down pretty easily. But okay, that's going to do it for our tests. So now let's go ahead and let's come over to, not that window. Is it this window? Yeah, this window. Let's come over to our GitHub repo. And then we have, I think, an issue here for the create form data util still. So let's go ahead and let's do a get status. We can do a get add dot because we only created the test and modified the form data helper. So let's do a get commit, fully test covered. Then we can do a get push. Push that up to here. We should see this code change happen when we go over to the code tab. We can then do a compare and pull request. And then we can say, yep, this looks good to me. Create the pull request. And then this should hopefully close the issue for us once we merge this PR, because this should be fine. So that should add in all of our expected functionality. That's closed. That's good to go. So now the only thing we really have to do is deal with these few uncovered lines of code, as well as the tests that are currently broken. For that, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you have a wonderful day.